Hi everyone, I'm Sarah and this is In Order of Awesome. So in Order of Awesome, every week I read 5 books and I share with you guys the books in order of their awesome. So this is our inaugural week and I'm very excited about it, and I have made a beginner's mistake and that I have loaned out some of the books before I vlogged about them, so I will just be telling you about some of them and not getting a chance to show you, but I promise I'll do better in the future. So, in true top list fashion, I'm going to be going in reverse order, and I'll begin with the 5th book, which is the least awesome, which I feel bad about because this week was a great crop, and I hate to say that any of them were in the bottom, but sticking to my formats, here we go in reverse order. Number 5 is Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl by Jess Andrews. This is one of the ones I loaned out, so I can't show it to you, but it is actually gaining a lot of momentum right now because it is about to be made into a movie. The only person I know who is in it is Connie Britton, who I love. Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl is about Greg, a slightly neurotic teenage character who's a little wrapped up in his own mind. He has one good friend who is Earl, who lives a completely different life than Greg's kind of sheltered and picturesque existence. And they share this one bond, which is obscure film and cinematography. And they've spent their childhoods making movies together. Well, it turns out that Greg's one-time accidental girlfriend, Rachel, who he met at Huber Camp, comes down with cancer. And as a result, Rachel's mom wants Greg and Rachel to hang out again. And in all of this, Greg is all wrapped up in himself and forgets that the person he's supposed to be helping is Rachel. But it is laugh out loud funny at times, and we get this cool insight into such good voice. Andrews does a great job of capturing that teenage boy voice, I feel like. And we get to see all the hilarity and all the awkwardness that comes with being a teenager. It's a great read. I would definitely recommend it for any young guys that you know who are reluctant readers. It's an easy read. It's fast-paced. A lot happens, including some accidental drug use, which is also hilarious. And how do you accidentally use drugs? But Greg manages it. Book number 4 is They Called Themselves the KKK by Susan Campbell Bartoletti. It's a nonfiction book about the Ku Klux Klan that records their rise to power after the Civil War. And it does a really good job of handling a very volatile subject very sensitively and with a lot of historical accuracy. She even has a note at the beginning talking about how there is some coarse language used and some words that we don't typically hear in our modern vocabulary, particularly in regards to people's race, but that she included them because it was important to the time and it was about the mindset that people had in the moment. It relies heavily on primary sources, which I think is a great thing when we're looking at nonfiction. As a teacher, I like to use things that rely heavily on primary sources in my classroom. So, but it also makes them accessible, where it explains a lot of the context and the background and the vocabulary used in these primary sources so that readers who aren't as familiar with this historical time period can understand it. I would definitely recommend it to teachers who have to teach anything about the American South in their history or social studies classes, and I would also recommend it for students who are ready to take a jump into investigating some of these historical contexts on their own. Book number 3 is another one that I loaned out before I filmed. I loaned it out to my Nana. It is called Prisoners of Night and Fog by Anne Blankman. It is historical fiction, which I will go ahead and straight out admit that I love historical fiction. And it takes a time period and really flips it on its ear a lot. It's set during, right before Europe is on the cusp of World War II, but it tells it from the perspective of a girl who is part of the National Socialist or Nazi movement. She also, because of some extenuating circumstances, is very close to Hitler and his inner circle, so she gets a lot of that first-hand insight into who Hitler is and what his propaganda machine is about. But along the way, Gretchen has a terrible brother who she has to deal with, who is also part of the Nazi regime. And she meets a Jewish reporter who is the first one to indicate to her that things may not be as exactly as they appear. And so we really start this mystery tour of trying to figure out what actually happened to Gretchen's father, who was allegedly a martyr who took a bullet for Hitler. And we also, Blankman does a great job of interweaving all of this psychological aspect in there. She studies Hitler very closely psychologically, and also Gretchen's brother, who is really just a psychopath, a lot. And great book, lots of heart, lots of romance, which, you know, I like deep down on the inside. It is definitely not for one who is new to historical fiction. It assumes that as a reader you already know a lot about the time period. But for somebody who is into World War II era and who knows a lot about the time period, an excellent read, a quick read. I liked it a lot, and I think you should definitely check it out. I waffled back and forth a lot about what should take the number 1 and what will take the number 2 spot of the week, but I finally made my decision, and in the number 2 spot is Codename Verity by Elizabeth Wein, I think is how you pronounce her name. It too is historical fiction set around World War II, but this one is slightly different. It's about a Scottish girl who we're not really sure of her identity initially, who has been captured by the Gestapo in France, in Nazi-occupied France. And it's so intriguing, the book, because it switches perspective. Sometimes the narrator uses first person and sometimes the narrator uses third person, even when she herself is a part of this third person narrative. And then we get an even bigger switch towards the end where we see things from her best friend Maddie's perspective, who we've been seeing the story of their friendship throughout. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to give away the mystery. There is a lot of mystery and intrigue that goes on in this, and I like it so much because so many of the books we read, regardless of the type of genre that they are, turn out to be romantic in a way, which isn't bad. But I love reading stories about real and genuine friendships, which this one is. And it had an incredibly unexpected ending, and I cried a lot at the end. I'll go ahead and admit that. I cried a lot. But it was really well written and very intriguing, and you have no idea what's going on really until the very end of the book. So Codename Verity, a must read, I would say, for sure. The number 1 spot book this week is Seraphina by Rachel Hartman, and I cheated a little bit and I got the audio CD from the library, which libraries are fabulous places, please go there. But it's a really long book, and I decided that it would be a good one to listen to while I was cleaning up and doing laundry or in the car. And the reason this one took the number 1 spot is because Hartman has built such a detailed fantasy world. It reminds me a lot of the way Rowling created Hogwarts in this magical wizarding world. But Hartman has done the same thing with dragons. In Seraphina's world, humans and dragons have an uneasy treaty, an uneasy time of peace between them. And in fact, dragons can take on human form to learn more about being human, but dragons are, it's almost a prejudice. It's a little bit taboo to be a dragon or to be this dragon in human form. Well, we find out kind of early in the book that Seraphina is actually half dragon, half human, which she doesn't know if there's anyone else like her in the world. And it would definitely be a big deal if people figure this out. Along with her struggle about her own identity, there is also a struggle between the dragon kind and the human kind of the realm. And it is about to be the anniversary of this treaty, but we discover that there are people who are trying to undermine this peace. Seraphina and others have to try and help maintain this peace and to keep others from coming to harm who would like to uphold that peace. It is a really complex story, and it is so fantastic. There's this kind of weird, awkward love triangle. There's lots of issues of family. There are tons of issues of identity. I think it's really interesting. Do people love you because of who you are in your soul, or do people love you because of what you are in your genetic makeup? And I think that's a really interesting question that is being asked a lot right now in our society. So I think it's pretty timely, the ideas that are and concepts that are brought up in Seraphina. A great book. It is a little confusing. It's long, and there's certain characters go by different names, and there's a lot of different magical and fantastical creatures to keep up with, and so that can be a little bit confusing. So it is not for people who are not familiar with fantasy, even if you are not huge into fantasy. I think it is a great book, and it's one of the best magical worlds I've read about in a long time. So that's it. That's my top 5 for the week. I hope you have enjoyed it, and I hope it only gets better and better as time goes on. If you are a teacher or an educator, or you homeschool and you would like to know more information about using these texts with your students, you can actually check out my blog of the same name, in order of awesome.wordpress.com. Will be a link in the bits below. And I will be posting some things that you can use and some key concepts that you can pull out of it. If you are just into young adult literature, or if you are a young adult yourself and you're looking for good reads, I hope you subscribe and come back. I would love to have you. Please leave any comments or suggestions below, and I will see you next week.